Hey there friends, Dave Paulides, Can-Am Missing Project, a copyrighted edition for our video channel, and we are at an episode of Skinwalker Ranch review, and that was for May 23rd episode. And I've got a lot of comments about this one. But first, since we're talking about anomalies in the sky and UFOs, Missing 411, the UFO connection. Had a lot of comments about it in the last week. Nearly everyone was super good. People were saying that it's all new material, you're not rehashing old stuff, you're coming up with new theories. And I know that's hard for some people to understand who haven't seen it. And to think that there is new material in the UFO world, yeah, there is. And Huck just walked in the room. She's going to sit here and monitor us. Right, Huck? He's a good girl. Yeah. Yeah. But, yeah, the UFO connection is still stirring it up. Still getting a lot of comments. A lot of distributors are now asking for it, so I'm pretty excited for it. And if you haven't watched it, you can rent it for just a couple bucks. So watch it. It'll definitely give you some insight into UFOs and the Missing 411. That's why it's called the Missing 411 UFO Connection. Now, let's talk about Skinwalker Ranch. Travis was saying at the very beginning that the rockets triggered two new events. Purple light in the field that vanished. I would agree that was unusual. And it was down low, and they validated that because of some security lights on another house on an adjacent property. And then Travis brought up an interesting point that I didn't know, that a purple light, for it to be vibrant, has to have lots of energy to it. So I learned something. Thanks, Travis. And then they went to the straight shot driller, and the driller said that his drill could go through reinforced concrete. That's impressive, because when I was younger, I dealt with reinforced gunite, which is used to build swimming pools. It had half-inch steel in it. Now at this point, I gotta say, I gotta be careful with what I say here, because it's easy to Monday night quarterback people. It's very hard to stand there and to do raw things for the first time, or to try to carry over some work. But these guys were going through material that they presented 3 times now at the beginning of this program, and it started to irritate me. They said for the 4th time that the material coming out of the mountain matches the stuff that's used in the shuttle, on the exterior of the shuttle. Essentially, 4 minutes into this episode, there was nothing new. Now, my time is no more valuable than yours, but yours is valuable. I think it's somewhat of an insult to the audience to throw repeatedly things that you've shown in the past. It really shows you have nothing. Then they talked about the transmitter. As they're drilling, it transmits a sound at 33 megahertz. And then it transmits a sound that's picked up above, transmits, and then there's a receiver, kind of tells where the drill's at all the time. And then they brought in a spectrum analyzer to monitor the signals coming out. And then Thomas said that the drill was 160 feet into the mountain, or the mesa, and he said something was pushing the drill up. And they said that was similar to something pushing the drill down. This is what I want you to think about. How do we know it's... The semantics of this bother me a little bit, but I brought in some props. Went into the exercise room, all right? So let's say the drill's coming this way, and it hits this. it's going to obviously arc up to find the path of least resistance. Nothing's pushing it up per se. It's hitting something and it's looking for the easiest angle to move forward. That's what I believe. Now, on the opposite end, here in this episode, it hits and goes up. In the past episodes, it hits and goes down. Now, I'm not saying that there isn't something here that's odd, but I am saying that pushing, you don't quite got me yet there, but maybe in the future episodes you'll convince me. So then they used the spectrum analyzer and they carried it up to Thomas. The drill was now 280 feet in and it was hitting this hard object and it wasn't penetrating it. And the drill was still sending out a signal at 33 megahertz. But they said that that 33 megahertz signal was being spread out. And I paid close attention and I backed it up and watched it 3 times. If you saw, it's transmitting at 33 megahertz, and as it went out, it slowly went down. Makes 110% sense to me in my feeble mind. And I might be completely wrong, but I'm going to tell you what I think. The drill's hitting a spot on the object. Let's pretend that is the object. And the drill is hitting right here. It's hitting, except it's drilling in. So I'm hitting this. The sound is the loudest here, and it's the least out here, because the sound dissipates as it goes through hard material, and then it finally is over. So louder here, less here. Same with that graph that they showed you, where it was loud in the middle and it dissipated as it went off the end. Couple of reasons for that. Could be maybe that was the end of the object that they were hitting, or that is the sound dissipating. They said some things again that bothered me. They said it spread out. Then somebody said maybe it's thinking metal. Now, a couple of things here that I want to talk about. And I'll back it up. If this was my show, I'd be doing it a little different, because I'd want to meet your expectations. And maybe I wouldn't, but at least I'd let you know that I have a reason for doing something that you're watching. Why are they drilling into that mesa? What's the point? My feeble mind just asking that question. It looks visually interesting a little bit when the drill going in, pull the drill out. Okay, that's interesting. But why are they doing it? They don't need to prove something's there. They've already proved that through LiDAR. Now, in the next show, they talked about that they're going to bring a drill and put it on top, a portable one, and drill down. So my question is, why would you expect a different outcome than what you had this time in today's episode? A portable drill, meaning it's lighter than the one they had today. And if it's lighter, then it's not going to have as much force going down. What's the point? Why don't they forget all this gobbledygook and start stripping that mountain down? I don't understand. Sorry. Now again, maybe it's just my feeble mind, and I am speaking about a physicist who's way smarter than I am. So, and I highly respect Travis, and he may be going a different direction here, and a few weeks I'll be looking like a fool. So, and then I want to explain this to you. A weekly series versus a documentary. This is a documentary. A weekly series. Those men that are out there on that desert have a certain budget. And that budget has to last 8, 10, 12, 16 shows. Now, they can top load a budget on a couple of shows and skim through a few real light and hardly spend anything. In my humble opinion, they hardly spent anything on this one. They brought the drill guy in, but the drill guy was in the other episode too. They hardly spent anything here. Really hardly spent anything. And I'm not saying that's bad, and I'm not saying you have to spend a lot of money to get something visually interesting. But darn it, they've got to do better. Goes back to what I said earlier. At the beginning of each episode, okay, our goal today is to understand if we drill in 3 different positions, are we going to get the same transmission at 1.6 gigahertz? And the reason that's important is blah, 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 blah. See, I don't know why it's important. And they've never explained why it's important. And they're saying it could be some kind of communication, but I don't see them trying to communicate. Just saying. So what they did was they drilled in, they weren't making any progress. They pulled out. Travis said it was a frictionless force field. Again, nobody was listening, but I'm telling you, this was said. When the drill operator was drilling, he said that this is the drill. The drill went in, it wasn't making any progress. And then he said, well, maybe the drill is just spinning. Here's the important piece behind that. If this is the drill, the actual drill, and it gets stuck in something, then it's gonna have a device right here that's gonna allow this to just spin on this piece, because you don't want to burn up the generator on the other end. It's just gonna spin. It's not gonna get this dull, because this actually isn't gonna spin. It's gonna be sitting in there so hard that this third piece is gonna spin. And that's what the drill operator said was happening. It wasn't that this was spinning and getting dull. It wasn't even spinning. People have to start listening to this guy. Am I the only one that's listening? I don't know. Then they said no pieces of metal in the screens. Talking to the driller. Oh boy, I was getting frustrated. Okay. So they're talking to the driller and they're saying, wow, it's you're hitting something really hard. They said that like 3 or 4 times. So my question, why don't they ask the driller this? So what kind of natural objects can you hit with that drill that will get the same reaction we're getting right now? I'd want to know. I would have asked the question, but maybe that question would give them an answer that would make the entire episode pretty boring. What if you said, yeah, you know, if we hit a piece of granite, that's what's going to happen. Or we hit a piece of quartz, that's what's going to happen. I'm just speaking off the top of my head. But what if he said something that just a mundane kind of rock? But they didn't even ask the question. And I know Travis would have asked the question because anybody who's an investigator would want to know exactly what the circumstances could be that would stop that drill. And then they talked about increased surveillance on the south field. Good idea. But I was under the impression that the entire ranch was covered by surveillance. And if it hasn't been, why isn't it? I was befuddled with that one. So when Thomas and some others went out to that south field, in George Knapp's book, The Hunt for Skinwalker, when NIDS was at the ranch, there were a lot of things that happened on that south field. A lot of things ran through that field. A lot of things happened near that field. And I think it would help for perspective if the guys doing this work now understood the history of the ranch and could talk about it as they evolved into that area. It would make for a much more interesting show if they said, yeah, you know, when the NIDS investigators were here, they had that blah, blah, blah creature run through this area. Or, yeah, they had lights in this area as well. Just saying. I mean, isn't it important to say what's happened there in the past may be an indicative thing of what's going to happen there in the future? But they don't really talk about it much. The dead deer. Oh, man. I've seen a lot of dead deer in my day. That deer, I wouldn't have given it 2 craps. It looked like every other dead deer. I'm sorry, I don't think anybody could tell you what caused that deer's death. There wasn't enough remains there. They didn't have a skull. They didn't have femur. They didn't have legs. Come on. In my humble opinion, again, I think these guys are doing great work, and I want to preface that. But this episode was pretty boring. And that deer, they made a mountain out of a molehill. There's nothing to that. Bite marks in the hide? Yeah, no kidding. There's coyotes all over that area. And then they didn't have any of the vertebrae near the neck to see if the neck was broken. They didn't have the skull to see if the skull was fractured by a predator. They didn't have any of this stuff. I don't understand how you can figure out what the cause of death is. Oh my gosh. And then they talked about the burn mark on the post. Oh, first of all, it's not a post. Let me explain to you. Ranchers, farmers, they're not wealthy people. They will use things out there in the wild for a fence post when it's not even a fence post. But it saves them money. A lot of times they'll be walking along and they'll see a big thick tree branch laying on the ground and they'll pick it up and they'll look at it. Okay, the strongest part of this piece of wood is this end. That goes in the ground. The weakest part is up high. The weakest part, the burn mark. They have no idea when that burn mark happened. It could have been 40 years ago. It could have been when the branch was laying on the ground. It could have been when it was on a tree and there was a fire around there 40, 50 years ago. Who knows? Just because there's a burn mark on that piece of wood while it is acting in its life as a fence post does not mean it happened there. Ka-ching. Maybe that's just my ability as an investigator to think through this and to understand what ranchers and farmers use as fence posts. Sorry, I'm getting frustrated. Haley Lundgren, doctor of veterinary medicine. Somebody said, oh, she was an expert at determining cause of death. Well, she works for a company that's a horse expert. It said it on her shirt, Paragon Equine. Equine. It means they're horse experts. I'm just saying. She never claimed to be an expert. And then, I don't know why, it just seems that a lot of softballs were coming this way, and this one really got me. The pink rocks on the mesa, on the hill. We talked about this a couple weeks ago. You know, if my memory serves me right, that's where they put the flares in the rocks, and the red flare smoke went out. Do you remember that? And then when they said it looked like it was made from a vapor. Yeah. Yeah. You mean to tell me everybody on that set and everybody in that building didn't remember the red flare? Are you kidding me? And then Travis tried to put the spin on it the best he could about selenium having some kind of optical, stealthy type of material. Okay. Fine. And then they said it was artificially placed there. Yeah, no kidding, Sherlock. Yeah, it was placed there by you. And then the material coming out of the mesa, they said it was europium, sodium, aluminum, a metallic mixture. I buy into that. Something, I've always said something weird is in that mountain. There's no doubt. So the highlights of this, very little money was spent doing research on this episode. Very little. But again, some episodes have to be that way. And I get it, because I've been on budgets before. But you know what? If you're going to do something low budget, do something that's going to be interesting. And I'm sorry, I'm going to say it again, that they ought to have a town hall meeting and the crew ought to show up and they ought to interview witnesses, have a big map on the wall, and explain where different incidents have happened. I'm big on maps. A map of that valley. A map of the reservoir right near them. Who's seen things around that reservoir? What kind of things have been seen? Maybe they ought to do more investigation to see what the connection is between the reservoir and the ranch, because there is. And then I'm going to pound this drum one more time. And again, maybe I'm probably not your casual observer. I'm not going to go out there and do something that's just for kicks and snickers. But I'm going to do something if there's some rationale behind it. So, what's the goal of what you're doing? Now, if you're taking the dirt off the side of the mesa, hey, I get that. You know? I had Tonka trucks, if you remember those. And it's boys and their toys. It'd be great bringing some big dozers and start clearing the mesa away. With the goal to uncover what's there. Now maybe the producers have told them, well, what if we take that all away and there's nothing there? Or what if we take it all away and it's a big dumping ground for old Model Ts? I don't know. I'm just saying. Maybe they're afraid that they'll shoot all their best footage doing that and then there's nothing left for the series. I'm getting a little worried. I'm getting a little worried because there's not some good filler here. And I think there should be. Even going to other locations in the United States. And Oak Island has done this successfully. They went to Italy. They've gone to other countries to draw the connection to what's happening at Oak Island. I think it might be the time to start doing a road trip and going to some other locations that may have parallel issues to what's going on at the ranch. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again, that I believe the Montana Vortex has a lot of things going on that are going on at the ranch. And the owner, Joe Hauser, thinks the same thing. I've spent countless hours there with Joe. I've seen all kinds of things, and I know there's something very strange going on. Now, there's other places in the U.S. that also have things going on very similar to Skinwalker Ranch, with a lot of UFO activity, etc. Maybe going to those locations, taking Travis there while the boys stay home, and just try to understand if there's other areas that are maybe on the same longitudinal measurement as the ranch? I don't know. And then I've also said this, but I've thought about it more. What if they brought in 4, 5, 6 religious leaders from different religions and brought them in at different times and get their spin or their understanding of what's going on, and seeing if their position, their being there, does something to the ranch? Because if it is a demonic entity and it has those tendencies, then it should react to a religious leader being there. I remember when they had a Jewish leader there, things happened. They just did. And I thought it was one of the more interesting episodes. I don't care if you believe in religion or not. I think that there's something to this. And why not explore it? And I don't quite understand why they don't. So, I don't want to beat a dead horse. But let me say this one more time. I'm about 1/100th as smart as those guys out there at the ranch. I look at things differently, as we all do. And we would probably do things differently. And we would probably do things very unsuccessfully. Travis has brought in some people that had some really cool tools that have showed us some unbelievable things above that triangle. And I'm grateful. But you know what? Travis and those guys that are doing all the hard work on that ranch, they aren't the producers. And the producers don't have a scientific mind. They have a visual mind. And they know what looks good on screen. So because of that, there's this dissection between what the team at the ranch wants to accomplish maybe and what the producers at Prometheus want to accomplish. And it's a very hard line to get together. And a few of those episodes they have this year already. The first 2 were good. Now with me, I'm a little different. Again, I produce 3 movies and I walk that line between results, presenting something on screen that's visual, and in the end, satisfying curiosity to people's minds that are smart. And I've met a lot of people that watch my movies, and they're a smart group of people. And they're demanding a lot, and I get that. I think that what's happening now is that they've either ran out of money or they're going to really shoot a huge wad of money here in the next couple episodes. But last time I'm going to say it. If you're not going to spend money on an episode, you better have some really good people showing up. Or you better go to people to tell some really interesting stories. They didn't have any big people today come to the ranch. They didn't have any interesting stories. And they kind of muddled on through and tried to make mountains out of molehills, in my humble opinion. Again, I'm grateful for what they're doing. I think Brandon Fugal has done an outstanding job with what he has. And I think you will find things picking up, because if you don't, that audience number is going to start to plummet. And I hope it doesn't, because I want this thing to go a few more seasons. But if it doesn't pick it up, they're not going to have the audience there. So, anyhow, thanks for you being here. And please pass this around to your friends. And remember, we've had some really good missing people cases that are very intriguing. I shouldn't use that word good. Very intriguing cases on missing people that have blown my mind as of late. And I'd encourage you to watch them. And you can follow me on Twitter at David Paulides at Can I Am Missing. And we have 3 videos out there. And I have 11 books on missing people. Our website for the books, NA, like North America, nabigfootsearch.com. And just go to the online store. Have a great week. Paulides out.